The name Tianying is not unfamiliar to you, though you fail to recognize it at once when you uncover the letter in Uncle Jiang's old hut. It lingers in the tales of local storytellers, spoken of as the hero who slew the Khitan envoy at Breeze Post, a Jianghu figure who once stirred your youthful dreams of wandering the martial world. What you did not expect was to see that name entwined with another, Master Miaoshan, the local monk revered as a living Buddha, who departed on a spiritual wandering 3 years ago, the very year of the Breeze Post incident. At the entrance to Harvest Fall Village, a horse dealer from southern Tang is offering a prized steed called Night Flash, the same horse that carried the Khitan envoy out of Qinghe from the blades of local patriots all the way to the Breeze Post in southern Tang. Drawn by curiosity, you approach, only to be told by Feijun, master of Wildmane Ranch and Finer Steed Hamlet, that Night Flash was bred there, and that 3 years ago it was borrowed by a man whose identity could only have been Tianying. The Wildmane Ranch has declined ever since the Khitan cavalry marched across Qinghe 15 years ago. Feijun clearly cannot afford the price the dealer demands, so you agree to help reclaim the horse. But when the two of you slip toward the stable at midnight, you overhear troubling news. Someone has already cut the rope and made off with Night Flash. Feijun rushes back to gather help, while you trail the horse dealers, who are now in pursuit. The chase leads you to Riverside Station, long since converted into a local prison. There, a bandit tells you that he once saw Tianying riding Night Flash through the post 3 years ago, shortly before the Breeze Post affair. The account seems baffling at first, but as you recall what you learned from Li Zhenguan's tragedy and your encounter with Li Hua, its logic becomes clear. Tianying borrowed the horse from Feijun precisely to ensure that the Khitan envoy would reach southern Tang territory without further delay. What you uncover in the prison aligns with this story. Among the wealthy Khitans who once lodged here was someone who bore the surname Xiao. The Xiao clan held a position of exceptional prominence within the political order of the Khitan Liao dynasty, yet it did not exist as a distinct lineage at the time of the state's founding. Its origins can be traced to the first Khitan empress, Shulyu Ping, who was born into the powerful Shulyu clan, one of the most distinguished lineages among the northern nomads. She and her clan were instrumental in the establishment of the Khitan Liao dynasty, and following the death of its founding emperor Yelyu Abaoji, she assumed the regency and wielded immense political authority. Shulyu Ping's son Yelyu Deguang is the Khitan emperor whose army clashed with General Wang Qing at the Battle of Zhongdu Bridge in 946 CE and later sacked Kaifeng in 947. Upon ascending the throne in 927 CE, Yelyu Deguang sought to systematize Khitan governance by modeling it on the bureaucratic institutions of the central Chinese dynasties. As part of this effort, he initiated a reorganization of his mother's kin group. The Shulyu clan, together with the Bali and Yishiyi tribes, both closely linked to the Yelyu household through long-standing alliances and intermarriage, were consolidated into a newly constituted imperial Afenal clan. Around 947 CE, this group was formally granted the Han Chinese surname Xiao. The choice alluded to the relationship between Liu Bang, founder of the Han dynasty, and his chancellor Xiao He, symbolizing the expectation that the Afenal clan would support the Yelyu imperial house as Xiao He had aided the Han. In practice, the Xiao clan fulfilled this role, becoming a key pillar of imperial stability throughout the Khitan Liao dynasty. This historical transformation explains why, although the 12th century historical text discussed in the previous video identifies the Khitan envoy involved in the Breeze Post incident as a member of the Shulyu clan, the game instead assigns him the surname Xiao. Night Flash escapes once more, as the horsekeeper at the jail is put to sleep under suspicious circumstances. After piecing together that the Khitan envoy's retinue was first ambushed at Riverside Station, you learn from Feijun that the horse has been sighted again, this time in the Jadebrook Mountains, far from the riverbank. Night Flash's trail leads you into the woods beneath Halo Peak, where the horse seems almost to beckon you towards something long forgotten. Scattered among the trees lie old corpses. The story they tell is familiar. These Khitans were the remnants of the envoy's retinue, those who fled Riverside Station 3 years ago, only to perish here. Among them also lie the bodies of patriots slain by Li Zhenguan, the lunar goddess. She had come at Tianying's behest, tasked with ensuring that the Khitan envoy would leave Qinghe alive, while Tianying himself entrusted Night Flash with the design of spiriting the envoy away from the chaos toward a place where his eventual assassination would deal the greatest blow to the Khitan state and southern Tang. As Night Flash guides you and Feijun to the spot where a jade horse figurine lies buried, a quiet token of gratitude for a borrowed steed, you begin to suspect that the mysterious figure who once cut Nightflash free and later lulled the horsekeeper at the riverside station into sleep could have been Tianying himself. He did not forget his promises, neither the one made to Li Zhenguan nor the one made to Feijun. Yet one detail unsettles the narrative's neat closure. An elderly monk at Halo Peak remarks that Nightflash bears a striking resemblance to a horse once brought to the region by Master Miaoshan, the revered monk who vanished on a spiritual wandering 3 years ago. Determined to uncover the buried ties between Tianying and Miaoshan, you visit Wildmane Ranch, hoping the place itself might speak more of the man whose name Feijun refuses to utter. The ranch yields more than you expect. Alongside a letter Tianying once sent to Feijun, and the matching Jade horse talisman to the one you uncovered at Halo Peak, a gift of gratitude for Nightflash, you discover Feijun's diary, as well as a small vial holding something strangely familiar. From the diary emerges an unsettling truth. A month ago, Feijun was captured by the Aureate Pavilion and was reduced to fodder for their human experiments. There, he was forced to consume a poisonous powder each day in a place where people were transformed into dream puppets. He survived, but not unchanged. Though spared that fate, he gained an unusual ability, the power to hear and understand horses. With the aid of a horse, he eventually escaped. Fearing that this gift might fade, Feijun sought to obtain more of the powder he had once been forced to ingest. Through a merchant from Weiyang City, he learned that the substance was none other than powdered datura fragrance produced in Mercy Heart Town. If you present Feijun with the vial found in his chamber, he recounts the tale again, adding that the vial contains the very powder he consumed during the Aureate Pavilion's experiments, snatched in haste when he fled the Mercy Heart Monastery. Alternatively, you may hand the vial to Buwen, a merchant of the Weiyang Chamber who visits the ranch to purchase warhorses. Buwen confirms without hesitation that the powder is poisonous and that its effects mirror those of the dream puppet. Neither man tells the whole truth. The vial in Feijun's possession may well have been obtained in Mercy Heart Town long after his escape, rather than taken from the monastery in his haste. And Buwen, if he is indeed the merchant who first guided Feijun toward the powder, has concealed all along that he knew of its poisonous nature, choosing instead to deceive Feijun into believing that it was intended as a harmless fragrant powder. Either way, this is no good sign, something already foreshadowed by the title of this wandering tale, Drinking Poison to Quench Thirst, which echoes the idiom Yin Zhen Jike, quenching thirst with Zhen poisoned wine. Zhen is a mythical poison bird, and in this idiom it refers specifically to wine laced with poison brewed from the bird's feathers. The expression first appears in Fan Yi's History of the Later Han in the biography of Huo Shu. Huo Shu was a historical figure of the Eastern Han dynasty who gained renown as a child prodigy. He had a maternal uncle named Song Guang, whose upright character and scrupulous enforcement of the law earned him the enmity of powerful figures at court. When Huo Shu was 15 years old, Song Guang was falsely accused of tampering with an imperial edict and arrested by order of the emperor. Refusing to believe that his uncle could have committed such a crime, Huo Shu resolved to write to Liangshan, the Grand General who at the time wielded effective power at court, to plead his uncle's case. In his letter, Huo Shu argued that Song Guang had earned the trust of the state through his integrity and unwavering adherence to the law. Such a man, Huo reasoned, even if he harboured doubts about an imperial edict, would never risk a capital offence by secretly altering it himself. He concluded with a striking analogy which persuaded Liangshan to reopen the case and present a defence of Song Guang before the emperor. It would be like trying to cure hunger with aconite or quench thirst with Zhen poisoned wine. Before it even reaches the stomach, it has already sealed the throat. How could such a thing ever be done? Feijun's experiences suggest that the Aureate Pavilion's human experimentation is aimed not solely at the impossible pursuit of immortality, but at the manufacture of a category of people endowed with special abilities. The ability to comprehend the language of horses that Feijun acquires by ingesting datura poison parallels the young master's own capacity to understand the language of animals, an ability unlocked once exploration points reach a certain threshold. Earlier, you learned from Sheng, the Qinghe oddities collector, that oddities carry the rhythm and sound of the world, and that your capacity to interact with them serves as proof that you belong to a special kind of people who can perceive and engage with the world in a more profound way. The game's internal logic holds that, by collecting various oddities that symbolize the awakening of sensory perception and intellectual awareness, you gain access to a wide range of voices that together articulate the truth of the world. Read alongside this framework, the shared ability between you and Feijun points toward a deliberate attempt by the Aureate Pavilion to engineer such individuals, people akin to you. The dream puppet, therefore, is not the Aureate Pavilion's desired outcome, but a failed prototype, individuals who cannot endure the poison. This interpretation aligns with the enemy's reference to failed hatchings, encountered earlier when you explore one of their strongholds with Yi Dao. There is, however, one crucial difference between you and Feijun, beyond the fact that your ability to comprehend the language of animals is more comprehensive than his. Feijun's possession of this ability is contingent upon the ingestion of a poison that inevitably leads to self-destruction, as suggested by the Wandering Tale's allusion to the idiom quenching thirst with Zhen-poisoned wine. By contrast, Zisheng describes your ability as evidence that destiny itself may be on your side. In other words, while the Aureate Pavilion's methods invite catastrophe, your possession of these special abilities is framed as a natural endowment rather than a pathological aberration. From this perspective, it is more plausible to conclude that you are not a product of the Aureate Pavilion's human experiments. Instead, the pavilion appears to be attempting to engineer a special type of human in imitation of nature's own creations, an effort that relies on flawed human intervention to seize an advantage whose purpose remains unclear within the law. Another intriguing lore detail at the Wildmane Ranch involves the merchant Bu Wen, a member of the Weiyang City Chamber of Commerce, an enterprise once overseen by Ying and now controlled by her cousin, Wen Wuhan. Bu Wen travels to the ranch to purchase warhorses from Feijun, and from a letter he leaves behind in Feijun's house, you learn that Weiyang City has agreed to supply 1,000 warhorses to a figure surnamed Wei. Thus far, only one such figure has appeared in the Qinghe lore: Wei Renpu, a prominent statesman of the Five Dynasties period and the early Song dynasty, who served successively under the later Jin, later Han, later Zhou, and the Song, and who played a pivotal role during the reign of Chai Rong and in the Song dynasty's early years. Within the game's lore, Wei Renpu is introduced primarily through the Jianghu legacy cries in the distance. In this quest, you explore Tianying's former dwelling alongside Feng Jisheng, who was at the time still a disciple of the Ink-bound order, and who becomes accidentally trapped within the cavern while searching for Tianying after hearing rumours of his return to Qinghe. This narrative thread helps explain, in part, why Qinghe has already been inundated with Jianghu wanderers and villains, some of whom are drawn by the same circulating news. You can also acquire this information from a man named Meng Da at the river shore between Blissful Retreat and Harvestful Village, from whom you will obtain one of Qinghe's Dark Surge fragments. After solving the puzzles on the first level, the two of you descend into a hidden chamber, where you discover that Tianying had previously recovered the Ink-bound Order's lost book collection of the 10 Sages, an archive that, in the game's lore, went missing during the Bima Post incident in 905 CE, which also involved the massacre of the sect. In recognition of this contribution, Tianying was invited to join the Order on the recommendation of Wei Renpu, and a figure referred to as Minister Feng, who, according to Feng Jisheng's dialogue and the Ink-bound Order's own records, is none other than Feng Dao, another prominent statesman of the Five Dynasties period. You may wonder why Wei refers to himself as Renpu, while the name signed at the end of his letters to Tianying is Wei Daoji. In fact, Renpu is his given name, and Daoji is his courtesy name, Biaozi, more commonly, just Zi. A courtesy name is a secondary name traditionally adopted upon adulthood, typically by members of the literati or those of higher social standing, and used in formal or social contexts in place of the given name, Ming. Back then, addressing someone by their given name rather than their courtesy name was often considered overly familiar or even disrespectful outside close familial relationships. The given name and courtesy name frequently echo one another in meaning, forming a deliberate semantic link. In Wei Renpu's case, the name Renpu may be understood as evoking benevolence that flows like water, nourishing and benefiting others, while the courtesy name Daoji signifies the act of upholding worldly affairs through moral principle and offering aid to the people. The relationship between the two thus traces a conceptual progression from ideal and principle to action and practice. Similarly, Big Zhao's name, Zhao Kuangyin, conveys the meaning of upholding, restoring, and carrying forward a great enterprise, while his courtesy name, Yuanlang, denotes the ideal of a luminous beginning. Taken together, the emperor's personal name and courtesy name articulate an implicit aspiration to inaugurate an era of enlightened governance and radiant order. This convention of maintaining a courtesy name alongside a primary name persisted well into the 20th century, only gradually fading as the social hierarchies structured around the imperial order dissolved. If you are familiar with modern Chinese history, you would notice that many prominent figures of the period still possessed, and were sometimes publicly known by, their courtesy names. In the Chinese version, both the letter addressed to Tianying by Wei Renpu, discovered during the Legacy quest, and the letter sent to Uncle Jiang found in Jiang Wulang's old hut include the character Bai appended to the sender's name. Originally meaning to state or to report, Bai functions in epistolary contexts as a humble and respectful formula when placed after a signature, conveying the sense that the foregoing has been stated by the humble writer. Judging from this shared tone of politeness and the writer's familiarity with Tianying, it becomes clear that the individual surnamed Wei, who wrote to Uncle Jiang 3 years earlier, was also Wei Renpu, who sought Jiang Wulang's assistance in helping his disciple out of danger. Returning to the merchant Bu Wen at the Wildmane Ranch, the letter he leaves behind makes it clear that Weiyang City, now under Wen Wuhan's control, is collaborating with Wei Renpu. Wei Renpu previously served under Chairong, is affiliated with the Hanging Blade, and now operates within Big Zhao's Song Court, all of which share an ambition to reclaim the 16 prefectures of Yanyun, which were ceded to the Khitan more than 2 decades earlier. Wei himself is no exception. In this light, although Bu Wen may appear villainous, particularly if he is indeed the Weiyang City merchant who concealed the truth about the poisonous datura powder from Tsi Feijun, and who openly declares his intention to use that secret as leverage to force Tsi Feijun to sell him the horse, should you hand the vial over to him, he is not necessarily aligned with the game's antagonists. Rather, he may be participating in the Hanging Blades and the Northern Vow's broader effort to recover the lost territories, even if he himself is not fully aware of it. The implication that Weiyang City is collaborating with authorities from the Song Court likewise reflects a deliberate echo of historical precedent. The Chinese description of the horse purchase wandering tale specifies that Weiyang City is located on Changlei Island, somewhere in the Donghai region. Based on this clue, it is reasonable to assume that the city lies within the territory of Wu Yue, a kingdom neighbouring the southern Tang that acknowledged the suzerainty of both the later Zhou and the Song and remained in constant tension with the southern Tang. In 978 CE, 16 years after the present juncture of the game's lore, Wu Yue was peacefully incorporated into Song territory. Its ruler, Tian went to Kaifeng and placed the region under direct Song administration. If the lore indeed extends from 962 CE to 980 CE, as the developers claimed in an interview last year, we may expect to see further involvement by Weiyang City within this historical arc. Moreover, as we learn from the Kaifeng lore that Wen Wutsue has already allied, at least temporarily, with the southern Tang to secure assistance both in acquiring grain for the poorer quarters of Kaifeng and in facilitating her return to Weiyang City, we may also assume that future storylines involving Weiyang City will likewise intersect with the long-standing conflict between the Song Wuyue alignment and the southern Tang. That said, while Wen Wuhan may be in league with Wei Renpu, one of your unlucky encounters has also revealed a suspicious connection between him and the Aureate Pavilion. Once, in the Flower Expanse, you encountered a courtesan who claimed to have come to Qinghe in search of a rare northern bloom, only to be harried by local bandits. Stirred by curiosity and a sense of justice, you helped her eradicate several bandit strongholds in the region. What you did not expect was that she was affiliated with the Aureate Pavilion, and that her request was, perhaps, little more than a trial, meant to test whether you were strong enough to survive their human experiments. As you drew closer to her carriage, she drugged you with a sleeping draught and had you smuggled into one of the pavilion's strongholds. You escaped, barely, and, at the village's exit, encountered Wen Wushuang of Weiyang City, with whom you fled to safety. From the exchange between Wen Wushuang and your pursuers, you learned that Wen Wuhan was constantly sending money to the Aureate Pavilion on behalf of Weiyang City, and judging from the assassin's tone, it appeared that Wen Wuhan and Weiyang City were in fact the weaker party in this arrangement. From the Dark Surge episode unlocked through your exploration of the Aureate Pavilion stronghold with Yidao, the Mercy Heart Monastery, and your conversation with Meng Da regarding Tianying's return to Qinghe, you learn that the Aureate Pavilion had risen to prominence within the Southern Tang court 3 years earlier, in 959 CE. When this detail is connected to the persistent historical tension between Southern Tang and Wu Yue, as well as later Zhou and Song suzerainty over Wu Yue, Weiyang City's paradoxical behaviour and ambiguous position begin to appear as part of a broader geopolitical pattern. Wen Wuhan may, at this point, be operating under pressure from a Southern Tang-aligned power structure. It is possible that the Weiyang Chamber's connection with Wei Renpu represents his attempt to sever Southern Tang influence, and, by extension, the Aureate Pavilion's grip from the region. This side quest also offers important details concerning the lore of the dream puppet and the immortality parasite. On your way out, you discovered that the pavilion's atrocities went far beyond the distillation of dream puppets from datura powder. They were planting poisonous flowers directly into living bodies, using human flesh as nourishment for their growth. The site recalled the remnants of Sun Buzi's experiments in the Gleaming Abyss, where human bodies likewise served as vessels for the immortality parasite, as well as a passage from Ba Wu's diary, in which he recorded that his friend Chen Huaixing had witnessed poisonous fungi being cultivated on people who were ordered to ingest poison and died as a result in the south. Taken together, these traces suggest that the origins of the dream puppet and the immortality parasite run far deeper and are far older than you had ever assumed. Returning to our discussion of Li Zuo's parasite, which resurrected the Void King and briefly dwelt within Fangshu, the parasite itself appears far more efficient and convenient than Sun Buzi's toxins or the earlier parasitic forms recorded by Ba Wu. Thus, we can assume that Sun Buzi's and Li Zuo's work share an underlying principle of human flesh as a growth medium, whether in the creation of dream puppets, the bestowal of abnormal abilities, or the resurrection of the dead in distorted forms. Another key clue emerges from the cutscene in which you awaken in a chamber filled with dream puppets during the quest. Before you can regain control of your body and break free, an Aureate Pavilion agent seated before you remarks that you would make an excellent source for what they call a poison bearer. In Wuxia tradition, such a figure is steeped in poison until the body itself becomes a vessel for toxins, or a weapon turned against others. This remark may be read as reframing Li Zuo's parasite not as a discrete organism, but as the product of a human toxin feedback loop. Poison infused into and refined within human flesh, then recombined with, and used to enhance, toxins derived from plants and parasites. Within this cycle, those known as poison bearers serve as both carriers and nourishment. This is undoubtedly a dark twist on the title of the side quest, which in Chinese is Hua Xia Mian, translated literally as slumber beneath the flowers. The phrase alludes to the saying, "to die beneath peony blossoms, romantic even as a ghost," attributed to the Yuan dynasty poet Zhu Lianxiu. The saying conveys the idea that if one must die, it is better to die for beauty, love, or passion, a death without regret. Yet there is nothing romantic in dying beneath poisonous flowers within the Aureate Pavilion's stronghold. Let us return to the question of Tianying and Miaoshan. Although Feijun cannot reveal more about Tianying due to a promise he has sworn to uphold, your visit to the Wildmane Ranch nevertheless sets you on the path to another site where traces of Tianying's past and his connection to Master Miaoshan still linger. From a woman named Liu Wunyang, you learn that Feijun was not the only one abducted by the Aureate Pavilion. Taken alongside him was a horse herder named Wu, whom you believe to still be imprisoned within Mercy Heart Monastery based on Feijun's experiences. The monastery has since fallen under the control of the Aureate Pavilion, but you manage to gain entry by posing as a physician. Within its walls, you find the grounds overrun with the same poisonous flower you encountered earlier in the pavilion's stronghold with Yi Dao, the very plant from which their datura poison is extracted, a substance said to grant advantageous effects, yet far more likely to reduce its victims to dream puppets. The horse herder Wu, you soon discover, has already been transformed into a dream puppet and sealed away within one of the monastery's inner chambers. He was not as fortunate as Feijun. All that remains for you to do is to collect his embroidered pouch and return it to his wife at the Wildmane Ranch. After a thorough search of the monastery, you succeed in curing its current abbot, Yao, of a fit of violent madness. Only then does the whole story begin to surface. Mercy Heart Monastery was once known as Fahua Monastery, and its former abbot was none other than Master Miaoshan. Yao was Miaoshan's disciple. When the Aureate Pavilion arrived in Qinghe and began hunting for the traces Miaoshan had left behind, they found in Yao a convenient instrument. Seeking to expand their influence in the region, they ensnared him by feeding his addiction to datura poison and by stoking his long-suppressed resentment toward his former master. The most crucial revelation, however, comes from Yao's personal journal. There, he records the truth that unravels everything. Miaoshan and Tianying are one and the same. The revered monk, celebrated as a living incarnation of the Buddha and welcomed into the imperial court, had never truly believed in Buddhist doctrine at all. To Huiyao, this was an unforgivable betrayal. Convinced that the faith in benevolence and good deeds he had learned from his master was nothing more than a carefully staged lie, Weiyao surrendered himself to corruption. Since 2 years ago, he has turned brigand, allied himself with the Aureate Pavilion, and thrown open the gates of his monastery to their human experiments, until your swords at last bring justice to this forsaken place. Only a few questions lay between you and the complete story. If Tianying has indeed returned to Qinghe, where is he staying? How were his deeds connected to Mercy Heart Town? And what other roles had Wei Renpu played in the lore of Qinghe? The winds of Jianghu brush against your cheek, and you have never felt so close to the truth. You are certain that something is about to happen, and there is only one way forward, into the Jianghu.